This is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy. Be sure to check out our blog and our YouTube channel and our newsletter. And my guest today, before I forget, my great sponsors, Italy Rooting, Aviativa Casa, and Phil Italy, if you want a great trip to Italy. And my guest today is Dominic Arresta. So welcome, Dominic. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Bob.
So, my first question to you is, when and why did you get started? I don't get too many young people that are researching, so that's why I asked that question first.
Right. So back in January, I attended Italian American Future Leaders, hosted by John Viola and Patrick O'Boyle. And it was a great convention, a bunch of Italian Americans, ages 21 to 35. There was about 200 of us there. And at this event, there was this man, Rich Leto, South Philly Rich. He was actually on your podcast about 3 years back. He gave this great presentation on how to dig up your Italian roots and how to organize it. And he showed a lot of great documents and kind of his journey. And it was really just inspiring to me. So I caught up with him after I got his contact information. And I kind of just started from there. And I built a family tree and found a bunch of interesting documents, reached out to my family members, and kind of connected a lot of the dots.
Wow, that's super. So, how long ago was that you got started?
It was only back in January.
Wow, you made a ton of progress in just a little bit of time.
Yes, there was a lot available on my mom's side, but on my dad's side, there were some question marks. But I have some family members who are knowledgeable about our family history, and they helped me string it all together.
That's really, really super. Um, so, what did you find that you really didn't know? You probably found a lot that you really didn't know, but what were the things that really got you?
One thing was my dad growing up, kind of his step grandfather was in the family, this man, Vincent Ronaldo. He didn't realize until his teenage years that his step grandfather had a different last name as his mom. And I had to do some real digging there to find out who his biological grandfather was, but I was able to find the marriage records and find the name and trace his roots back to Italy.
And I guess, us older guys trying to find photos of our grandparents and our great grandparents, it's a little bit difficult because, well, a lot of times they didn't even have photography. It was just starting. So you're blessed, I guess, kind of, because you have a lot of great photos.
Yeah, definitely. And there was actually a distant cousin of mine who I've never met who made this giant tree and it overlapped with some of my family. And she had some really good photos of one branch, which was great.
Yeah, that's really, really super. One thing that I guess kind of interested me was, I guess some of your family came from, I guess they migrated from Connecticut to Queens, New York, because usually it's the other way around.
Right. There's actually a funny story with that. So my great grandmother, Teresa Lagalante, came through Boston, settled in Waterbury, and my other great grandfather, Antonio Scricca, came through Ellis Island and went to Waterbury, Connecticut. I actually went on newspapers.com and I was able to find a bunch of newspaper articles. I had known that Antonio Scricca did a short stint in jail, and I was actually able to find the news article of when he got arrested and the reason. It was something to do with trying to counterfeit money. And from there, that was in 1930. And Teresa Lagalante, with her three boys, one of them was my grandfather. She moved the family to Corona, Queens from there.
Wow, that's that's really, really interesting. So that's
Crazy.
one thing that we have in common, because that's where my mother's family settled, in Corona, Queens, and my father too. Eventually, my father was born in New Jersey, the only one in his family there, and I don't really know the story. All I know is that my grandfather's business, I guess, during the crash of '29, I think they got in some financial difficulties, and I think they wound up selling their house in New Jersey and then wound up in Corona. And my mother's family was there too. My mother was born in Manhattan. So do you know where they lived in Corona? What street and stuff?
Yes, it's 4726 98th Street in Corona. And then my great grandfather Antonio Scricca had a cleaning business, Forest Hills Cleaners, from 1946 to 1990. After my great grandfather passed away in 75, my grandfather continued until 1990. That was on 6430th, 108th Street in Forest Hills. And then my other great grandfather on my mom's side had a bakery called Belmont Bakery. That was at 9722 Corona Avenue in Corona.
Yes, that sounds familiar. So, what years was the bakery?
I don't have the exact dates of that yet. I'm sure I could get it, but this whole thing's been in progress. I actually just yesterday had my cousin Georgie send me some photos of the bakery, so I'm still kind of going through that, trying to get more information.
Yeah, because I think the bakery name eventually changed.
Yes, Via Bella, I think I saw in some of the photos.
Yeah, yeah. So, when I post this out on the Corona Facebook group, I'm sure somebody's going to say, "Yeah, I remember it," or "Changed to this name." I don't recall it myself, but we were kind of on the other side of Corona. We were closer to 108th Street, although my cousins lived on 97th for quite some time, and I
Wow.
mean, if you've ever watched the show, The King of Queens, the lemon ice king of Corona.
I've been there. Yes, my mom would take me there when I was a kid, in the park side and the park right there.
Yeah, yeah. The park side, the he just recently passed away, Tough Tony, but he was friends with my cousin for a long time, and well, I mean, I guess it's more than a rumor. He was connected in some kind of way. But my funny Parkside story is they had only been open a couple of years or something like that, and I was just started dating my wife, and I had a MGB convertible, and we they didn't there was no parking there, so I parked across the street, and I had the top down, and I didn't set the alarm or anything. And she said, "Aren't you going to set the alarm?" I said, "Nobody's going to bother the car here." So we go walking in, and she's telling me, "Yeah, you should." And we go walking in, and there's a guy standing there with his arms folded in front. And I said, "Is that car safe? Okay, like ain't nobody going to touch that car." So it was, he did make the neighborhood very safe because the park across the street, Spaghetti Park, was well known for drugs and stuff like that, and he cleaned it up. And as far as I know, it's still pretty clean in that area. But that's one of the last real holdouts from the Italian days, from the 30s, 40s, and 50s, as your mom probably knows and remembers. Now, so I know your family came from various different places in Italy. So which towns did they come from?
Right. So this was actually my original goal. Before I started any of this, I said I set out and I wanted to know where all of my great grandparents came from and where they were born. So generally, I found that 6 out of 8 of my great grandparents were born in Italy. One of them was born in Argentina to an Italian family, and one of them was actually born in America to an Italian family. So going from left to right, starting with my dad's side, my great grandfather on my dad's side was from Corato outside of Bari. His wife was from a small town called Petaneo in the province of Messina in Sicily. And then to my dad's mom's side, Charles Trapani was from Marsala outside of Palermo. And then his wife, Rose Cogliano, was the one that was born in Brooklyn. Now, her parents came from a small town called Gesualdo outside of Avellino in Campania. Moving on to my mom's side, my great grandfather, Antonio Scricca, was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, to an Italian family. I believe they went to Argentina and then went back to Italy before coming to America in 1912. And then he was the one that settled in Waterbury, Connecticut, met my great grandmother, Teresa Lagalante, who was from Casamassima outside of Bari. I've been to that town. Teresa Lagalante was one of 11. And when I say my cousins in Italy, normally I'm referring to the descendants of Teresa Lagalante's siblings, who we still keep in touch with over there. And then my mom's parents, Angelo Quinterno and Elvira Oliento, they were both foundlings born in Palermo, and they were raised in Missile Mary and Belmonte. Belmonte is actually where the name of the Belmont Bakery in Corona, Queens came from. My great grandfather named it after the name of the town in Sicily where she came from. And both of those towns are outside of Palermo. I know my aunt actually traveled there. She has some interesting stories about going there and trying to dig some things up, since it's just a family mystery who their actual biological parents were. But we were able to find the birth documents from Palermo, and there's no parents listed.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about it. They didn't the foundlings, even if they knew, they didn't list them.
Right.
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
yeah, yeah, I know it is. It is. 'Cause I know a couple of guys, I mean, they were adopted here in America in like the 60s and the same thing. And one guy eventually, well, they both eventually found their families, but one guy actually just went and showed up on the doorstep one day, knocked on the door and said, "I'm your son."
Yeah, I mean, we'll just let it be a family mystery. To me, they'll always be my Sicilian great grandparents.
Well, sure, of course, naturally, naturally. Yeah, it's it is exciting, and I mean, like I said earlier, it's so great to see young people starting to do that. I interviewed Patrick and John. Geez, boy, it must be at least 3 years ago, something like that. And Rich, of course, and Rich he's a super proponent of all of this kind of stuff,
He's
and
great.
yeah, and he took off just like all of a sudden, he just started really, really getting into it, which is really cool and super to see. Uh, so so you said you were back. So did you go back when you were young, or just recently?
I've been to Italy 4 times. I was lucky enough to do a study abroad semester in Sorrento, Italy in
Oh, nice.
2016. And when I was studying abroad in 2016, I was able to connect with some of my cousins. We have some cousins that live on the east coast of Sicily, outside of Catania. I was able to go there. And then that was my first time going to Casamassima and Bari, the whole region of Puglia. And since then, I've been back 3 more times just on family trips.
Yeah, that's so great to have the opportunity to study there. That must have been fantastic. Was that like
It was amazing.
with a group with the school, or you just on your own, or?
Yeah, it was part of the reason I picked my college. I went to a technical school in Western New York called SUNY Alfred, and they had a study abroad program, and it was specifically geared towards the business and architecture programs. And I was in the architecture program there, and we went over with the professor, and we took 2 architecture classes with the American professor, and then took 2 Italian classes with the Italian professor.
Oh, that's great. So, are you fluent? I'm trying to learn, but I'm a terrible
No,
language student.
I've been trying to pick it up. Just one of those things that just gets lost generation to generation. So just trying to bring it back. Like I know all my grandparents spoke Italian, and then it gets lost a little bit from my parents to me.
Yeah, and it's well, same here, and it's difficult to keep it up unless you're speaking it all the time. We were just there, and I tried my best. My wife said I should have tried harder, even though they say they don't mind. It's I could understand it better than I could speak it. So if they were talking to me, saying something to me in Italian, I could usually catch on. But trying to talk back, it's hard. It's hard, especially trying to learn at my age.
Right. When I take a step back and I look at this little family tree that I've made, and I look at all the dates, it's like they all came here from 1903 to 1918. It's like this is over 100 years ago now when all my ancestors came over here, and it just everything's just gotten Americanized. And it's a big reason why John Viola started the Italian American Future Leaders. He wants to kind of still in the next generation to keep the traditions going, and the culture and the language and everything. So it was nice to be surrounded by other young professionals that have the same sort of passion. And I still joke with my mom. I'm like, Mom, you forwarding me this email to go to this weekend event. You never thought it was going to set me off on this family tree that I have over 350 people in the tree now.
And well, and she didn't know any of this either, so it must be exciting for her to hear it, right?
Well, they obviously knew what they knew through like stories and word of mouth, but for me to actually dig up all of the naturalization documents, the migration documents, the certificates of arrival of when they actually got to Ellis Island, just where everyone was born and the dates, I mean, that's what's really interesting. Stuff that they maybe haven't thought about in years. And I wish I would have done it earlier, as most people do, when I actually could have asked my grandpa or my grandmother. But that's what happens.
No, I know, and I tell everybody the same thing. If you're lucky enough to have the grandparents, alive. And nowadays, some people, they even have their great grandparents alive. And we have the opportunity now. You could sit down with your phone and record them and ask them questions, and just preserve for everybody. I was found out through all my stuff that my cousin, he interviewed my uncle in Barres before my uncle passed away, and nobody knew it. I don't even remember how I caught on. I think I was speaking to his sister, and she told me, and I said, "Joey, you have to translate this. You have to." So he had to go. I mean, he had it on like an 8-track cassette or something like that. He had to go find the machine to listen to it. But he translated, and it was fascinating because my uncle was left when my grandparents came. He was left there, and he didn't come over to the 50s. That's the family that lived on 97th Street. So we have his whole life story in Italy from like 1906 through 1950. Um, and it's through the war and all those kinds of things. It's really neat stuff. Um, so yeah, so it is. That's certainly what people ask me, what should I do? I said, boy, if you ask grandma, right? That's the greatest thing. And I would find stuff and tell my father had already passed away when I started, but I would find stuff and tell my mother, and she was like, "Are you sure?" Yeah. I was able to find the records, and it is great to go back to the hometown. You really feel connected.
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's just great to be able to say that I've been there. There's so many people in America that just either have no idea where their family's from, or have never been to where their family's from. So it's nice to still have some contact with them over there.
Yeah, and I found especially from my father's mother's family, you know, cousins, close cousins, closer than I thought I would ever find. So, have you done any DNA tests, or have anybody in the family done DNA tests?
Well, yeah, this was a funny story. So I think maybe 5, 6 years back, I saw the Ancestry thing was on sale. It was like $40 or $60. So, Mom, I'm going to do the DNA test. She goes, "Why do you need to pay $60 to find out you're Italian?" Anyway, I did it and it comes back as mostly Italian. I'm like, okay. And then I didn't really start using Ancestry again until 5, 6 years later when I built this whole family tree. But it's not really telling to me. It's more interesting to actually see the documents of where they were born and things like that because it just told me I'm Southern Italian. I mean, I got some other little things in there, but I mean, who knows where that's from or what it's from.
But did you find any, like, cousin connections or anything like that that, you didn't know, or
I mean, not really. I mean, I've reached out to a few people, but I find that not a lot of people are too active. If they made an Ancestry account to do the DNA test, they might not actively be using that account.
well, that's true. And Ancestry, I mean, they got really, really expensive. When it first started, it was pretty reasonable. Now, even to keep your tree, if you just want to keep the tree now, you have to pay $5 a month or something like that, where it used to be free. I,
It's
I,
free. No,
I
I don't. I have my own tree. I'm not paying.
yeah, I
Straight
mean,
down.
when people ask me about starting, I always send them to familysearch.org first because they're
Right.
still free. So I say
Yep.
start there, and then if you really interested in finding cousins or something like that, then maybe go to Ancestry.
Right. And Family Search is a great resource. I mean, that was one of the main things that I used. It was really, I built a tree on Ancestry and then I found the documents on Family Search. And I've used Ancestry as kind of like a digital log to keep a lot of the dates, births, marriage, deaths. And then I've uploaded the documents that I found from Family Search directly to the tree on Ancestry. And then I messed around a little bit with newspapers.com. That was interesting. I found some marriages, obituaries, things like that, just on historic news articles.
Yeah, I had the same thing. A couple of years ago, I think they had like a free month or something on newspapers, and I found articles on my dad's family when he lived in New Jersey, which were some were interesting, some were really pretty funny. Like one of them was like, my aunt motored motored. That's the exact word that they use. Motored to Brooklyn for 3 days
Wow.
on vacation.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to find on there.
And then, but I found the obituaries that led me back to Italy. That gave me either told me something I didn't know or confirmed something that I thought.
Right.
Uh,
Like siblings, marriage
yeah,
names.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a record in there that was my mother had passed away. And there was, I guess back then those local newspapers, I guess you could walk into the newspaper office and just tell them, my parent died in Italy, and they would put a thing in there where like it was a big deal or something like that. But even uh, crazy things like one of my father's birthdays or something like that, that they had a party and these guests arrived, 1925, 1926 or something like that. So there is some neat stuff. And then also, my father was a photographer for the Daily News in New York. So I did sign on for a while and was able to find a lot of his photographs and, newspaper pages. I have some of the photographs. And that in itself is interesting because if the most interesting thing about it is you'll see an ad for, a vacation to Florida for like $54. When you come across those things, it's really pretty interesting. So now, do you have siblings?
Yes, I have a younger brother by 2 years, and I have a half sister, my dad's daughter, who's older than me.
So what do they think? Because I know my family thinks I'm crazy, but I'm just curious.
I think they think it's interesting. I think they support whatever I want to do. I think they think it's cool that how many people can really say they know where all their great grandparents were born and where their families were from and everything. And some people don't really care so much, but a lot of people really do, like you and me and Rich and some other people I've connected with. And it's great just to preserve the family history.
Well, yeah, and I kind of think we're chosen in some way to do that, because I believe that the ancestors want to be found.
They
To me,
do.
it's just part of the cycle.
And it's not easy. I mean, I was for a long time, I was trying to figure out a few things. And, my dad's dad was a pharmacist and trying to figure out why. Turns out that my great grandma from Sicily came from a line of pharmacists and surgeons. So I asked my aunt, I'm like, you
Wow.
think maybe she steered him in that direction? She said, oh, it's possible. And that was one interesting thing that I found out. And one of my great grandma who was born in Brooklyn, I couldn't find anything on her. And it turns out that she was born in Brooklyn. She wasn't born in Italy. So she was born an American citizen. There were no naturalization documents or migration documents. I had to go back another generation to my great great grandparents, and I was able to find information on them and found out where they were from. So there's a lot of bumps in the road, but if you just keep asking the questions and keep doing the research, you can uncover it. It's all out there. It's all digital nowadays. It's great. Like I didn't really have to go anywhere. I mean, I submitted some requests to the National Archive and they got back to me digitally. It's not like I really had to go anywhere to find any of these things.
Yeah, that's what makes it easier now, especially the Antonani and things. Although there's tons of stuff that they still have to put out there. But I was lucky because my mother's family from Torito and Bari, the, the whole town is indexed and filmed, and I was able to. And this was 5-6 years ago. It was already out there. Where my father's family, Naples, there's just so many records that have to be done. It's tough finding things. And the other thing with the Antonati, um, if depending on who signed or who filled out the paperwork in Italy, if their handwriting was good, they can index it pretty easy. If their handwriting was not good, it's very difficult. And I tell people you have to try variations on the spellings.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and a lot of them did change their names, so it was just a whole nother layer that you had to get through. And like my dad's step grandfather, everyone was telling me his name was Vincent Ronaldo. Vincent Ronaldo. Couldn't find anything on the guy. I find out his birth name was Vincenzo. Everything was in Vincenzo. So there was a few like that across the board where Antonio was Anthony now, Calogero was Charles now.
Yeah, yeah, and my great great grandmother in Italy, her last name, she was from Switzerland, and her last name was Mohr, Mohr. Well, I found her under three different spellings on the
Oh,
Antonati
wow.
because one was Moeller, they had one was Mohr, and the other one was I forget what the other one was, but it wasn't an Italian name in the first place, so who knows when they went in there and gave them a death record or a birth record or something like that, what they came up with. One thing that does make it easy for us researching Italians in Italy is that the women, even today, they don't change their name.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, what they went through coming over here and everything, and just think about the boat ride and how they even got to the boat, some of the jobs that they worked. It's just crazy. All early kids, and they set the foundation for me, my siblings, my parents.
Well, yeah, and the fact that a lot of times the men came over by themselves first, and then when you're in some of these towns in Italy that are up on a mountain someplace, that it may take 2 hours to get to Naples. Now probably took 2 days back then on a donkey cart or something like that. And these women would make this trip with 2 or 3 kids or something like that, and having no idea where they were. I mean, they never left their town.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think it's great that people like us shine light on these parts of Italy where they don't get as much publicity. You think of like the typical American trip to Italy, and it's Rome, Florence, Venice, right? Or Amalfi Coast, Rome, Florence. And then people like us, a lot of our families that came from Calabria, Puglia, Sicily, Campania, Basilicata, Abruzzo. So it's nice that we can show other people that, look, there's more to Italy than just Rome, Florence, Venice.
Well, yeah, and when you're there, the people are so happy to see you. In some cases, I think they're more thrilled to see us than we are to be there.
Of course. I mean, it's nice just to stay connected, like I said. And um, when I always knew I had these Italian cousins in Casa Massimo, and then I really start looking at the tree, I'm like, wow, like I'm a descendant of so much more than just this one place over there. And I'd love to try to get back to some of these other places someday.
Yeah, yeah. And we just got back, but this time we actually did what you just said. We went to Milan and Florence and Venice and places like that because we had never been. And it was great, from an architectural point of view
Of
and
course.
from an art point of view, some fascinating stuff. I mean, we had of course take the obligatory gondola ride in Venice,
Of course.
which I never thought I would do or ever cared to do. But we were tourists, and when you're in a hometown, you don't feel like a tourist, even if you don't speak the language.
Definitely. Yeah, it's great, and just puts a smile on my face just to know that still have some cousins over there, and you can go back. It's there, and the place is not going anywhere.
Yeah, and what I find fascinating about your family is that, even, you're certainly much younger than I am. You had a lot of, Italian marriages, even in, I guess, through the 60s and 70s and things like that, which, the second and third generations and fourth generations, they start to intermarry and things like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that, of course, but it's interesting that your line was still pretty much all Italian.
Yeah, it is. I mean, my mom says that, her and my dad had the same kind of upbringing, same kind of background. My dad's family was from Brooklyn, Williamsburg, and Greenpoint, and my mom's Waterbury, Connecticut, and Corona, Queens. So seems like similar stories. But I think my mom had a lot more influence from her grandparents. She knew all four of her grandparents, and my dad only knew his biological grandmother and his step grandfather. My dad never met three out of four of his biological grandparents.
Oh, right, right. Well, I mean, I'd love to have your mother on sometime and talk about Corona if she's
Of
if she's up
course.
to
Yeah,
it.
I'd love to connect you guys. Love to connect you guys.
That would be so much fun. We could compare notes and who we know. My uncle, I mean, she would have to know some of the places. My uncle owned a luncheonette on 108th Street, um, just maybe 3 blocks from the Lemon Ice King, right down the street. So I'm sure she would know that place. And my aunt, she owned a beauty parlor on must have been, let's see, maybe 44th or 43rd Avenue and 104th Street, I think it was. So she would have to know. She would have to know some of the places. She
Yeah,
may even know
definitely.
some of my cousins, because
Probably.
one of ask if she knows any Nicolettis or Scarangellas, and
Okay.
Scarangella is like Smith in Torito.
Yeah,
Because
there's
the
a lot of
name,
them.
the name of the towns. Some towns, maybe they might have 3 or 4 surnames or something like that. So
Yeah, well,
that's yeah.
yeah,
Go
it's
ahead.
crazy. I mean, just
Yeah.
yeah, back then, just they were just one of seven or one of 10. How many siblings do they have? So many people.
Yeah, yeah. So, but before we go, if there's anybody, any of the people in the group that you're in that are interested, give them my information. I'd love to have them on. Like I said, I love having young people doing it because I think the more I do this with the young people, maybe we get more young people excited in doing it, and you know, like you said, keep that message alive and keep that connection to Italy still there.
Of course, I mean the resources are out there, and once I traced everyone back to Italy, I came across Antenati and couldn't really find some of these documents or translate them by myself. So I've been using a paid service. This young guy, Andrea over there, who very reasonable rate will find these documents, attach them directly to my family tree, give me the translations. So he's been able to go deeper. I mean, I took it to the say mid late 1800s with a lot of my family names, but now he can take it back to 16, 1700s. But the resources are out there, and you just have to talk to people. And I'm happy to share this video with the IAFL group, and if there's any interest there, I could connect you guys.
Yeah, and the same thing with the guy who does the translations. I mean, he'd be great to have on,
Of course,
and talk
yeah,
about some of this stuff.
for sure.
Because a lot of people doing it. Some people go on they have one document or something like that. They'll post it on the Facebook group and somebody help them out. But if you have a long document or something like that or a bunch of things, it's nice to have somebody that could do that for you, especially if it's a reasonable rate.
Of course, yeah, it's so difficult just to read the old Italian cursive if it's not your native tongue. It's so difficult. So I think you need somebody like that if you really want to dig as deep as possible.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, I know you have real work to do, unlike me.
Yeah,
So I appreciate you taking time and being on and stay in touch. Anybody that you think might be interested in doing something like this, just let me know.
of course. Have you gotten Rich's book? Rich just published a book.
No, I haven't gotten that yet. I'll have to. Yeah, he may have uh, sent me an email or something like that, but I'll have to check with him. I didn't even know he did a book.
Yeah, it
I'll
just
have to
came
have him
out. I
back
just bought
on.
it. I just read the first chapter yesterday. It's nice to see how he logged everything together.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I'll contact him.
Okay.
Well, thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bob.